Let's redefine the outdoors. And to make sure you all are still inside on this nice day in a darkened room, how many of you routinely get outdoors for some form of recreation, whether it's skiing, hiking? Oh, what a surprise, Bozeman gets outdoors. Well, you're not alone. Roughly half of all Americans participate in some form of outdoor recreation, and it's growing in number and diversity of our activities. Outdoor recreation, getting outdoors, is good for our economy, it's good for our communities, it's good for ourselves. Whoops. So, on the economy, nationwide, outdoor recreation accounts for some $887 billion in consumer spending and employs over 7.6 million people in direct jobs. In Montana, it is a growing and vital sector of our economy, accounting for nearly $6 billion in spending, and it employs 64,000 of us, probably many of this in the room. For our communities like Bozeman, the outdoors is part of its competitive profile. With technology, geographical boundaries are smashed. Companies can locate wherever they want to. So the outdoors becomes a major factor in attracting the very best human capital. We've heard a lot about health today. The outdoors is very good for both our mental and physical health. Numerous studies have shown that it improves our immune response, our physical conditioning, short-term memory, particularly important for some of us at least. What am I doing here? And our concentration. It's even been shown to help prevent nearsightedness or myopia in children. Lastly, for those of us who care about wildlands and wildlife heritage, for the next generations to fully pick up championing our nation's public lands, they need to have a firsthand experience. It will not come from this. So, quiz time. Complete this sequence. More people are doing it. It's good for the economy in our community. It's good for our health. And here's the quiz part. Who's paying for it? The answer may surprise you. By and large, hunters and anglers are paying their way. The rest of us recreationists, not so much. And as we have more and more people trail running, kayaking, cross-country skiing and all, it comes with no corresponding commitment to help pay for it. So let's go to Washington, D.C. So I'm a taxpayer. We all just paid our taxes. Those are public lands, so I'm helping pay for them, right? Unfortunately, less and less so. This is where your tax dollar went in 2016. The federal government spent some $4 trillion in 2016, but don't think of the government as Uncle Sam. Think of it as a very large insurance company with a side business in national defense. So after you take away payments to individuals, after you pay for defense and the interest on national debt, the remaining 6 cents of your tax dollar goes to everything else: social services, highways, national parks, foreign aid. And public land management is a minute piece of that and going smaller. So let's put that in the context of one of the largest purveyors of outdoor recreation, the U.S. Forest Service. This is their budget over the last couple of years. Not looking bad, actually. Oh, see that red spot? Those red bars? That's the money being consumed by wildfire. So this is what the budget looks like for things like wildlife and recreation. Now, for those of you mountain bikers in the room, that might look like a great terrain to ride, but it's crappy for not so good, rephrase that, not so good if you're expected to manage public lands. Montana has over 30 million acres of state in federal lands. So let's rephrase that. I'm a resident of Montana. I pay my state taxes. Therefore, I'm helping pay some of my share. No. Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is responsible for managing our fish, wildlife, and habitat resources in this state. They manage over 55 state parks, 68 wildlife management areas, and over 300 fish access sites. This is where the revenue comes from. 75 cents comes from fees and licenses paid by individuals. 24 cents comes from the excise tax paid on fishing and hunting equipment. And our tax dollars, general fund dollars, pays little to none of that. And this is how many fish and wildlife agencies get their funding, especially in the West. Montana is a mecca, internationally renowned for its hunting and fishing. But hunters and anglers are aging. A perfect example stands in front of you today. And as we look at the number of hunters in the United States, both by total numbers, the blue bars, and by as a percentage of the adult population, we see that trend. So when you think that you've got increased demand and you've got decreased ability to pay for it, that bodes badly. So I'd like to go two places. I'd like to remind us all that the solution lies in us, not looking somewhere else. And I'd like to go back to the future, 1934 and 1937 to be exact. In 1934, Congress passed the Federal Duck Stamp Act, where hunters were required to purchase a stamp to go hunting. Since then, millions of the stamps have been bought by hunters, with the birders and a few stamp collectors thrown in. That has raised over $1 billion for conservation and been converted into 6 million acres of habitat. To put that into perspective, that's larger than the state of New Hampshire. In 1937, Congress began passing a series of acts that were collectively the Wildlife and Sport Fish Restoration Program, a user pays, user benefits system where hunters, anglers, and boaters pay an excise tax on the equipment they use in that sport: guns, ammunition, fishing rods, archery equipment, small boat fuels, and similar. Since the beginning of that program, it's raised billions of dollars. And last year, that program returned $1.1 billion to the states and their partners to use on things like habitat protection, river access, aquatic education, and more. So let's do a reality check. We have increased demand for outdoor recreation. We have underfunded state and federal public lands. We have hunters and anglers paying their way, but losing market share. And we have increased number of free riders expecting services they have not been asked to pay for. So in closing, I'd like to offer two things. Hunters and anglers have provided us perfect examples on how to pay our way, time-tested and accountable. When I go fishing, when I go hunting, the equipment I use pays that excise tax. When I switch hats and go hiking, camping, river running, what am I paying? What's the opportunity? So what I'd like to provide is challenge ourselves to raise $2 billion annually, in addition, new funding, to help pay for our public lands management. And the way to start this is we need to have the outdoor recreation industry and our elected officials hear that from us, the user. Now, it's interesting because when sportsmen find out, I mean, who's popular with taxes here? Probably not a lot of you. Anybody want to pay some more? But hunters and fishermen have paid that, and when they find out, I mean, most of them don't even know they paid it. And when they find out what it's used for, they support it. So do the companies that have to pay this tax at the time of manufacture. So let's add $2 billion more. New money, not stealing it from someone else, new money. And lastly, let's start to build a coalition where cooperation, not conflict, is the coin of the realm. How are we going to do this? Well, let's stop bickering among ourselves about whose use is the most holy. Let's demand from our elected officials and others a continued and increased investment in our public lands for water, for wildness, for wildlife, and for recreation. Lastly, we need to put our money where our footprints are. Thank you.